I now give the floor to the Permanent Representative of Greece. Thank you, President.
Thank our briefers, Special Envoy Peterson and ASG Misuya for the detailed briefings and committed work on the file. Mr. President, several months since the seismic change that took place last December, Syria still strives to find its footing. A demanding political transition is currently unfolding against the backdrop of precarious economic and security conditions. We are ready to offer support to Syria's transition and ensure that the Syrian people will see peace and prosperity once more after 14 years of bloodshed and deprivation. In this context, I would like to highlight the following 3 points. First, the political transition in Syria needs to be fully inclusive and Syrian-led and owned, as justice and accountability remain critical. Acknowledging the presence of the Syrian Foreign Minister, Ms. Al-Shabani, here with us today, let me reiterate that Greece stands in full support with the Syrian people. We are committed to continue engaging positively with Syria and assisting towards a brighter, more prosperous future for the benefit of the whole region. The Greek Foreign Minister was one of the first EU ministers to visit Damascus in February and offer a concrete signal of support in this regard. At the same time, we expect on Syrian decision makers to opt for political inclusiveness, fully protecting and integrating all components of the Syrian society. These include Christians, Alawites, Druze and Kurds. It also entails an active participation of women in the process. It is of paramount importance to avoid relapse into sectarian and inter-community violence. Against this background, we took note of the formation of the transitional government in Damascus. While it does indeed include one representative per society component, much is left to be desired, as it does not fully take into account the demographic data. We consider that there is still space for improvement, especially in terms of the participation of women and the representation of all components of the Syrian society, also in key cabinet positions. Likewise, the constitutional declaration as a framework for a multi-ethnic, multi-religious society is a significant first step, but state-building principles, such as the separation of powers and the introduction of checks and balances, are indispensable for the viability of institutions and the legitimacy of the administration. Progress along the political transition track has not been met with universal acceptance for all communities. Their concerns and aspirations can be better expressed through the national dialogue, which we urge the authorities to keep alive in the ensuring political transition. We also encourage a deeper involvement of civil society components. As Special Envoy Peterson noted, the need for repairing deep sectarian fractures and mistrust is huge and comprehensive work is required. Similarly, the agreement between the SDF and Damascus on March 10 is valuable, committing the parties to engaging non-violently. We welcome the recognition of key Kurdish needs that this implies, as well as the seeming stabilization of northern Syria that this entails. We are closely monitoring next steps in implementation, considering the inclusion and integration of the Kurdish population in Syria to be essential for its stable future. We urge all regional actors to refrain from violence and inciting escalation in this regard. Mr. President, recent political transition developments were overshadowed by the appalling violence in the coastal region in early March, involving the death of more than 1,000 innocent civilians, mostly Alawites and Christians. The violence was rightfully and strongly condemned by this Council on 14th of March, clearly highlighting the urgency for full accountability and transitional justice. The swift decision of the caretaker authorities to establish an investigative committee to hold the perpetrators accountable is seen as a positive move by the international community. We are now eager to welcome the publication of the transparent and impartial investigation process, encouraged by the positive meeting of the committee with USG Di Carlo in Syria during her recent visit. In the same spirit, we invite the transitional government to allow the Independent International Commission of Inquiry to investigate all violations and look forward to the presentation of the 11th report of the International Impartial and Independent Mechanism at the General Assembly on the 29th of April, encouraged by the Foreign Minister Shabani's scheduled participation in the said discussion. Likewise, we are encouraged by the extensive discussion held between the Syrian Transitional President and Special Envoy Peterson on April 6, fully supporting a more substantive and frequent engagement between Syria and the UN. Second, Syria's economic conditions are precarious, while international support is critically needed. I wish to reiterate Greece's full solidarity with all Syrian people. Recognizing the harsh humanitarian condition, as described by SG Misuya during the sober briefing, we pledge our support for Syria recovery at the recent Brussels conference, contributing to the EU commitment of some 2.5 billion euros. With our consent and constructive engagement, the EU was swift in suspending certain restrictive measures as part of a gradual, conditional, irreversible approach, and will continue to examine possible further suspensions on the basis of close monitoring of the situation on the ground. This approach is adopted in solidarity with all Syrian people as we attempt to ensure that expectations are met in terms of an inclusive political transition, accountability, as well as full adherence to international law, including, let me stress, the international law of the sea. In this context, we must also not lose sight of the right of all Syrians to return home and help rebuild the country. Third and last point, the security situation requires a collective vigilance. As often described by briefings to this Council, the threat of radical groups re-emerging in Syria is ever present as foreign fighters still operate within the country. As advocated by Special Envoy Peterson and other Council members, an effective approach to comprehensive security sector reform, as well as disarmament, demobilization and reintegration, is surely needed. This is an area in which the UN is well placed to contribute significantly and join the required experience and expertise. We thus invite Syria to positively engage with the UN towards this goal. We also believe that it is significant for regional stability to ensure the viability and security of camps holding ISIS fighters and their relatives in northern Syria. We equally welcome as important for regional stability that Syria intends to positively engage with the regional partners such as Lebanon, and we hope that dialogue on bilateral issues such as border delimitation will begin. Last but not least, we would be remiss not to reiterate our full support for the sovereignty and territorial integrity of Syria, which must be fully respected by all, upholding relevant international agreements and United Nations Security Council resolution. Mr. President, in concluding, let me stress that as Syria stands at a crossroads, we must remain cautious of the dangers and challenges that lie ahead. We believe Syria's future can be bright and prosperous at the end of an inclusive political transition involving transitional justice and accountability, as well as the improvement of the country's economic and security condition. The Syrian people can count on Greece to be on the side along this path. I thank you.
I thank the Permanent Representative of Greece.